So thank you to everyone for answering my poll. If you have already answered it, I was just interested in learning a little bit more about what you might have been interested in. So my name is Erin, and I am the Student Recruitment Officer with UBC Engineering. So my job is really to support you in coming into our program, answer all of your questions, and one of the things we do are these live sessions where we can connect you with current students to be a part, to learn more about the community, to learn more about what our current students get up to. And so I'm really excited to have you all here with us today. To walk you through the platform a little bit, if you haven't been on Collaborate before, if you use the purple tab in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a chat bubble, and so you're welcome to use that chat bubble to ask questions, or you'll be able to raise your hand and you can use your mic as well. Do note that this is being recorded, so I will not read out your names, but if you are speaking with a mic, it will record your name on the screen. So today we're just here to talk a little bit more about ways to kind of get involved and how to actually go about finding your community. So Crystal, thank you so much for being with me today. And we'll go through some questions, some of the common questions that I normally get about this topic, but if you have other questions about getting involved at UBC Engineering, definitely feel free to ask those in the chat, or like I said, you're welcome to use your mic as well. So Crystal, why don't I get you to introduce yourself first so that everyone can get to know you a little.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Crystal. I'm a second-year mechanical engineering student here at UBC. I'm also an international student. And this year I've been working really closely with Erin on our engineering stories platform as well.
Awesome, thanks Crystal. So welcome again. There are so many different ways to find your community at UBC, so both campus-wide as well as within UBC Engineering. So campus-wide, we have over 350 clubs that you can be a part of. Anything that you might be interested, from dance clubs to language clubs to ski, snowboard, biking clubs, really anything that you might be interested in. And then in UBC Engineering, we have over 30 design teams. We also have 8 ex officio clubs. So those are clubs that are related to engineering and supported through the EUS, which is our Engineering Undergraduate Society, or our student government in engineering. And there are so many more ways to get involved. So with Crystal here today, I'll get straight into asking her some questions that you can listen in on. And as I mentioned, if you are interested in asking any questions to Crystal, then you are welcome to use the purple tab in the bottom right-hand corner and to use the chat bubble and chat with us using that, or you can unmute yourself and use your microphone as well. So Crystal, why don't you start out by sharing some of the ways or some of the things that you've been involved in that has helped you find your community?
Yeah, so in first year, one of the things I was really involved in was I was living on first year residence. So I was actually part of the Totem Park Resident Association. I was serving as a floor representative. So through that, I was able to connect with lots of my floor mates and also people from different floors and organize a bunch of events with them. Another thing in engineering I was involved in was I was part of the design team called UBC Rocket in first year. And I was able to learn a lot more about the cool rocket science stuff that I never knew before. I was also able to connect with a lot of more senior members on the team. They are probably like 3rd or 4th year engineering students. And this year, I'm also part of the UBC Best design team. So we design biomedical devices to help people. And I was also part of the Pilates club for a bit last year in first year. I was able to meet some friends through there as well.
Awesome. I always get lots of questions about design teams, Crystal. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, one, what it's like to be on a design team in your first year of school, and maybe a little bit also about how you actually went about joining the team.
Yeah, for sure. So during Jumpstart, we got introduced a lot of design team information. So through then, I was kind of starting to pick out what teams interest me the most. I joined UBC Rocket because I always thought like space exploration is really cool and ambitious. And as a first year, I didn't have too much experience with rockets. I didn't know anything about it, to be honest. But I think one of the things they're really looking for in first year was your eagerness to learn. So if you show them you're really willing to take on new responsibilities and learn new things, people are really willing to accept first years. And during first year, when everything was in person, we will usually have Sunday meetings from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So from that, we will work in sub teams. I was on the recovery sub teams, so we manufacture and design parachutes as well as the rocket separation mechanism. So I was working a lot with SolidWorks, the different design tools, and talk to our teammates about how to go about designing the dimension of parachute or whatnot. And we actually got to manufacture some of the parts in the machine shop, which is pretty exciting for me. Yeah, but for design team, you work with your team a lot and also across multiple sub teams as well. So you'll be exposed to many different type of new areas, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. So yeah, we have a lot of first years that will join design teams, and first years are welcome to join design teams, but you can also switch teams throughout your degree. You can go on to different teams. You can explore a little bit. So the only thing that I would advise if you're coming into first year is that you're not overspreading yourself. So usually we recommend getting involved in maybe 2 to 3 extracurricular activities. More than that can sometimes be hard to manage your time. So Crystal, that's my next question for you. Can you talk a little bit about time management and how you were able to be involved in these things while still managing your course load?
Yeah, so this year I'm on 2 design team, although it's like online, so there wasn't too much time commitment compared to last year. And I also working part-time for about up to 8 hours a week. And I was taking a heavier course load than first year for sure. So I think one of the really key ways to manage your time is definitely use your calendar wisely. So I tend to have classes and then I'll use my most unproductive time to do something that is relaxing, whether that will be exercising or just chilling at home doing other things. So I think time management really comes down to knowing what your priorities are. So once you know your priorities, you will find the time to like really maximize the time and be really efficient to do your tasks. And I think that's like a really great way to manage your time. Just be really efficient, be really focused when you're doing the task.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. And I'm going to plug what Crystal is a part of. And so she is part of our engineering stories team this year. So I've just put the link in the chat. So youtube.com/engineering stories. You can see all of the videos that we have there. And there are lots of videos about time management, lots of videos about joining design teams. You can see more about what Crystal's been up to this year and what kind of some of the school online pieces have been like. So definitely check that out because there's a lot of detail in there that you can learn so much more about being a student at UBC Engineering. So that's kind of the basics of what I had planned to ask Crystal. So I'd really like to know what you want to know more from Crystal about how to go about whether it's making friends or how to get involved in different things. So please, again, feel free. I know we just had some people join us. So if you use the purple tab in the bottom right-hand corner, you can use the chat and you can ask any questions that you're interested in learning more about. So please feel free to use the chat to ask us questions. You also can use your mic if you would like to ask your question out loud as well. So I'd love to hear from you about what you're interested in learning more from Crystal. And Crystal, one more question that I have for you before we get to anyone's questions that get submitted is, what would you say is kind of your best piece of advice for any students coming into first year that are wanting to get involved in different activities, maybe not sure how to? So what sort of advice would you have wanted coming into your first year at UBC?
Yeah, I think be open-minded. I guess just go with like an attitude of trying new things, exploring different things. Because what you thought you don't like you might actually end up liking that thing. So I would say go in an open mind and and try to be brave and step outside your comfort zone a bit, because everyone is here to learn. And if you're in engineering, you deserve to be here. So you're as good as anybody else. So so two things, just be open-minded and don't be scared.
Awesome. So again, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. Crystal, what do you think surprised you most about coming into UBC Engineering? Did you know many people coming into the program, or did you have to meet lots of friends? How did that work, or maybe what were you surprised with when you came in, and things that were maybe easier than you thought?
Yeah, so I did my last 2 years of high school in Vancouver. So I knew several people going to engineering. I guess one thing that surprised me was how much broader the type of people I can meet. Just because in Jumpstart, I was in this Jumpstart group, and then there are people literally from everywhere. Like, people come from all different backgrounds, and they have really interesting life stories. People come from all around the world. So I think one thing really surprised me was how diverse the student population can be, and especially engineering, there's a lot of international students. So, and yeah, just meeting different people really surprised me.
Awesome. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. This is your chance to connect with a current student. If you have any other questions about UBC Engineering, I'm happy to answer those as well. So please feel free to use the chat. Again, if you click in the purple tab in the bottom right-hand corner, you can use the chat bubble and use the everyone chat to ask your questions. And you can also unmute yourself if you would like to ask out loud. So again, any questions that you might have about UBC Engineering, about coming in, about getting involved, anything like that. So there's one question. In first year, how many students were in your classes, and how many do you have now? So maybe do you want to answer the first one first. So how many students were in your classes? Do you know?
There are a lot. It's a big lecture hall. Probably like 200, 300. Is it right, Erin? Around that?
Yeah, I would say most of our first year classes are going to have about 250 students in the lectures. But each lecture that you have that's large like that is going to have a smaller component, like a studio or a lab or tutorial, that's going to have more like 40 to 60 people in it. So even though you'll have some larger lectures, you'll still have a smaller component of that class. And Crystal, so now you're in mechanical engineering. Obviously, things are online right now, but do you know what size your classes are right now?
Yeah, so mechanical engineering at UBC for second year is a very kind of tight and unique program. So we do everything together as a class. So my year has about 120 something people. So yeah, that's how big my classes are right now. But as Erin said before, we have labs. So we break into like smaller teams, probably 2 or 3 people. But lectures, there will be 120 people right now.
Awesome. Great question. So the next question is, what does your weekly schedule look like? Do the teams and clubs all meet multiple times per week? So maybe you can talk about that, about when you are involved in clubs and other activities, kind of how does that add into your schedule?
Yeah, I was just looking at my schedule. So I actually finished my regular school content a few weeks before. Right now I'm on my design course. So before that, during regular class time, I will have classes from probably 9 a.m. to 3 o'clock-ish. And then I'll have tutorials in between. In terms of teams and clubs, so my design team, I have one on Saturday morning and then one on Sunday morning, and that meets once a week. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would say from my experience of working with students, most of the design teams are going to meet on the weekend because students are pretty busy during the week. If you are in an upper year and involved in, so design teams will have at least tens of students, if not close to 100 students on their design teams, and there will be sub-teams and all sorts of things like that. Each sub-team will have a captain of that sub team, and then there will be a captain of the whole team as well. So if you're in one of those leadership positions, definitely you'll be putting in more time, like several hours throughout the week and then on the weekend as well. But if you're just on a team in a not a leadership position necessarily, then you'll be putting in probably a few hours every week, but a lot of the meetings happen on the weekend. So great. The next question, was it difficult for you to get used to the university environment? And what is it like for an international student to work on the language and English and making friends?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I did Jumpstart, which is like a week-long orientation at the end of August. That time you basically have a lot of free time and a lot of events to go to before starting your classes. So as I mentioned before, my engineering Jumpstart group have people from all around the world. So I was able to meet a lot of international students. And also I live on residence. So I have neighbors from Japan, India, Australia, all sorts of places. So I think meeting people and adjusting to university environment as first year I would say wasn't too difficult. And get used to the language. I think the best way is to practice it. Don't be afraid to speak it because like people won't judge you, to be honest, because people are from all sorts of different backgrounds. They might have their own accents as well. So I think just really be brave and just speaking English, then your English will improve.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. So next question is, how big is campus? Is it common to get lost or be late between classes? So maybe even thinking back to the start of your first year versus the end of your first year, how big or small did campus end up feeling?
At the beginning, during Jumpstart, it definitely felt really big. I would use Google Map to a lot of places. Yeah, I usually, at the beginning of the school year, I usually plan ahead, like the night before. I need to go to 8 a.m. lectures just to know like where the buildings are. But you would get used to it. And I think once you become more familiar with the campus, you tend to know like where those few buildings that you have classes are. You know where they are usually. So it's easier to navigate from them.
Awesome. Yeah. And your classes will be like, your lectures are always going to be in the same room for the whole term. So your first term will be from September to December, and you're going to the same place every day or every week at least. So you'll get used to it pretty quickly. You do have 10 minutes to get between your classes, and for the most part, that's not an issue with any of the classes. Most of the kind of main lecture halls are going to be within 10 minutes of each other. There are some areas that are further. So if you're in residence, to get from residence to lecture hall, it might be a little bit longer than 10 minutes, but campus itself isn't too big in terms of like getting between classes. But it is big, but it's pretty easy to get used to pretty quickly. And chances are, if it does take you more than 10 minutes, it takes you like 11 minutes or something, everyone from your classes in first year are going from basically the same class to the same class together. So you can also, so if you are 1 minute late, your whole class will be 1 minute late. So we try in the scheduling to make sure that that's not going to happen. So we kind of try and look at those pieces when we're scheduling all those courses. And if it ever does happen, there was actually a course a few years ago that we moved the whole course altogether because it was taking students too long to get between their two classes. And so we worked with the scheduling team and we moved the first year class to be in a closer classroom so that they didn't have to walk so far in between classes. So we're definitely here to support you and to make sure that you are doing well in your first year. And I mean, it's good to get some exercise, but we definitely don't want you to have to actually run between classes. So awesome. The next question is asking about the return to campus. So I don't have any specific information for you yet on that, but I can share with you a blog post that will be updated once we have more information. I know that the public health officer has indicated that we should be planning for a full return to campus sometime this fall, but I don't know any of those specifics yet, and UBC is working on that. But if you keep an eye out on that blog post that I shared, you will find all the details as soon as they are available. Next question is, will your Jumpstart groups be made up of all engineering students? Crystal, do you want to talk a little bit more about what your Jumpstart group looked like?
Yeah, for sure. So Jumpstart, they usually split by faculties. They also split by residents or non-residents. So those people who are taking the bus to school, they will be split into other groups. But within your group, everyone is from the same faculty. So my group is all from engineering, and my group are all everyone on my group. They also live on residence as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's typically the way it is as well. So even students that are living off campus are still welcome to participate in Jumpstart. And Jumpstart is open to domestic students, international students. So it's a really great way to get familiar with campus, meet other people before even starting your classes. So it's a really great opportunity to be a part of. The next question is, did the large lecture sizes make it difficult for you to understand course content? And if so, how did you adjust so that you were not falling behind in class? Do you want to talk a little bit more about those lectures, Crystal?
Yeah, for sure. So I think compared to high school, going to a 200 people lecture hall was definitely a little bit intimidating at first. And at the beginning, I found myself getting distracted somewhat easier. So I think one of the ways to really work on it is to get familiar with the material that the night before or a few days ahead, just to know what's going on in the lecture. Because in case you miss it, you'll still be able to follow up later. And another great way for those big lectures is to go to the professor's office hours to ask questions. And also can ask the TA or your friends for help as well.
Awesome. And I will mention a lot of our first year classes especially have what we call a flipped classroom. So you're actually doing a little bit of learning before you even get to class. So you might watch some videos or have to do some reading before you get to the lecture. The lecture is going to be focused on making sure you understand the main overall content. You might even work on some problems. And I know AppSci 100 and AppSci 101, which are some of your first year classes, you'll actually work in a group as part of that lecture. So you're sitting with your group during the lecture anyways. And so the lecture is really the way to make sure that you have all the content. A lot of the courses will give you slides or notes ahead of time that you kind of need to fill in during class. So it's kind of if you're paying attention to that. And taking notes. And then it's really those labs and tutorials that we mentioned that are going to get into the actual full understanding and application of things. So those are going to be your smaller classes. You're going to have TAs or instructors to help you in those sessions. So like we mentioned, the lectures are larger and you are going to be with more students, but it just depends on what class it is, because there will always be some sort of kind of more hands-on learning or more in-depth component where you're working on the actual understanding and application in a smaller setting. So awesome. We have time for a few more questions. So the next one that came in, can you explain course structure? I've heard that for engineering students, sometimes take 6 to 7 courses at once. Where they're from, 6 to 7 courses would be an impossible workload. So what is defined as a course? Are labs and tutorials considered separate classes, or are they built into regular classes? So we're going to go way more in depth into actual course registration pieces a little bit later on into May when we're getting closer to course registration. But students in engineering will typically take 6 or 7 courses per term. So you're actually taking 12 or 13 classes over the full year. So when we look at a course, we have something like, if we use AppSci 100, for example, which is your Introduction to Engineering course, you're going to have your lecture is usually going to be 3 hours over the course of the week. So it's usually going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, an hour each of those days. And then you also have a lab that runs for 2 hours. So all together, that whole class is about 5 hours a week. And then you would be doing some coursework outside of that class as well. So you're going to have a combination of different classes, but keep in mind, one of those classes that you have is only 1 credit. which means 1 credit hour, which means you're only having it once a week, and it's just a lab. So Physics 159, for example, is just a lab that runs once a week. Doesn't have lecture components as well. Some other classes, like your first year English class, might just be lecture times. You'll just have 3 hours of lecture a week, and that's it, no lab. So it really changes depending on the course. Crystal, did you want to add anything to that explanation?
Yeah, I think that was a great explanation. I think I would say it is possible to do it. Like students do this every year. I think so. It really comes down to how you manage your time wisely. Just take one thing at a time, and don't overwhelm yourself.
Awesome. So maybe our last question will be, Crystal, what was your favorite course? And also, what is your favorite thing about UBC? So maybe first, what was your favorite course that you've taken so far?
I think my favorite class in first year was the design classes, so the AppSci 100, AppSci 101, just because I got to learn a little bit more about engineering design process from all the way from brainstorming the idea to actually building the product. I thought that was really rewarding, and I got to work with my team as well to use our creativity and all those concepts that we learned in class. So that was really fun. My favorite thing about UBC is definitely the community. I met a lot of great people through my time at UBC, and I found myself really belong to the community. And I was also able to, with the support that I have, I was able to explore a lot of new things that I never thought I would try. Yeah, so those are my favorite things.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. So thank you all for joining. That's going to be it for us this evening. So thank you for joining. I hope you got a little bit more information about kind of how to get involved in some different things. We really have so many things to get involved in, especially in engineering. We have the design teams that we spent some time talking about. We have lots of even just kind of fun one-off activities. So we have E-Week that happens in January every year, where each of the departments kind of compete against each other in different activities. We have Week ENOT, which is kind of a welcome week at the beginning of the school year, where there's tons of fun different activities going on. We have so many different things, and I really think that the engineering community at UBC is one of the best ones, one of the best faculties with the most community involvement, because our students are really so connected and so happy to get to know each other and make some just phenomenal connections. So thank you again, Crystal, so much for being here this evening. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Anything else that you want to add before we sign off, Crystal?
I think there's a question in the chat. Like one last question. Yeah, someone's asking for the...
Oh, sorry. So one from Lauren. Do you think that it's doable to do engineering and university athletics for track and field? Would be during 11 to 1. So we do have a lot of varsity athletes, and our advising office will work with you to design a schedule that will work. In some cases for varsity athletes, it may mean pushing off some of your courses to later, either in the summer or spreading out your first year, but that would be a great question for our advising team to connect with. And if you are a varsity athlete, they should be connecting with you directly to help you scheduling that. Course registration doesn't happen until early July, so you still have a lot of time before that will even happen, but our advising team will work with you. So it is definitely doable. It'll depend on, it might change up your course sequencing a little bit, but our advisors will work with you to figure that out. Awesome. So yeah, thank you. Anything else to add, Crystal, about finding your community, getting involved?
Yeah, just be open-minded to new things and don't be scared. You guys will all be fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Crystal. And if you want to hear more from Crystal, definitely check out Engineering Stories. We also have an Instagram account called Engineering Stories, so you can see more about some amazing people doing really great work in engineering. And so thank you all for joining. I hope you have a great evening. And keep an eye out for upcoming emails, because we'll have lots more of these sorts of events coming up throughout the summer that you can connect with current students and get your questions answered. So have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.